Hello, Luann, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
How about you, Michael?
Yep, I can.
All right, great. We're gonna get started in just a minute here. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Being 4:30, we'll call the budget committee of the whole to order. Roll call taken. Move right into number 2, discussion of approval of 2022 health insurance contract with We Are Trust.
All right, so I would like to introduce to you Luann Boyer. She is the city's consultant for health insurance. And then also on the line or on Zoom, we have Michael Bruder, and he is a representative or our representative for We Are Trust. So in the packet, what I provided to you was the 2 original renewal options from We Are Trust. And originally the alternative 1 and alternative 2 were at 5.2% and then 4.2%. And then what was negotiated through our consultant was the second page of that. And that was the renewal option 1, originally at 5.2% down to 4.2%. So I will need at the end of this conversation an approval to move forward with that second renewal option or second renewal page that is in front of you right now. But also I brought Luann and Michael here so that we can kind of talk you through thinking what the process was that the city went through for services, and then Michael can talk about the change in the policy itself and what that looks like. There's a narrow or network, and then some changes of the network. So Luann, I'll start with you, and then Michael, and then please feel free to ask both of them questions as they're going through the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Judy. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Obviously, it's that time of the year where we go through the renewal process. And in receiving the renewal from WEA Trust and having some conversations with Michael, there are some larger ongoing claims within your group, and they are projecting by the end of the year a 120% loss ratio. What that means for every dollar that premium paid, that means that there's pretty much $1.20 coming out in claims paid. So WEA Trust did need a renewal increase for that. And originally that started out at a 14.8%. So that's really what we were facing initially. In talking to Jay and Judy, you know, in the past we've marketed out, we always marketed out. And at times, based on the makeup of the group, sometimes we don't feel or that we don't get any options in from carriers to take a look at it. So based on what's going on in the group, we really decided to kind of work with WEA Trust on some options, as well as try to negotiate that rate down. What we were able to do, and I will share that WEA really came to the table, starting out at a 14.8%. We looked at possibly narrowing the network, and that is the option in front of you. And what Michael was able to do is kind of do a comparison from the network as it stands now. This is the network of physicians, to what that might look like in January. And really it was only removing children's and medical college. And by removing those as participating providers, we were able to get some significant savings on that. And as Judy said, originally it started at 14.8. We negotiated that network, the narrower network, down to 6.8 and then to 5.2, and then obviously what it sits now. So Michael was probably sick of us negotiating with him, but he really did come to the table knowing that the city really needed some help this year and to get that increase lower. So I'm very happy with the renewal, especially with the loss ratio, and I'll go over and turn it over to Michael.
Sure, thank you. And thanks for having me. And, you know, we're excited to continue our partnership. Obviously a difficult renewal, but I think we were, as Luann mentioned, able to put together a good option on the table that really, in my mind, allows you to continue to have a great network, a great benefit offering. When we look at actual plan design, we didn't change anything when it comes to your plan design outside of One small little tweak, which you'll notice on the rate sheet, is the co-insurance for the non-network. And that changed from 80% to 70%. And really the only importance of that piece is that we need a bigger gap with a narrower network to continue to encourage people to use in-network versus going to an out-of-network provider that maybe is no longer in the network. So outside of that deductible, those types of things, additional benefits, those are all same. As far as additional programs that the city has access to, those will all continue to be there. We have some enhancements that we have within our program as well that are just built into the renewal premium and into the plan design. So overall, like Luann said, the only change is to a quote unquote narrower network where, Children's Hospital, Medical College, some of those, what we would call specialty care providers are being removed. But one thing to note is there are alternative solutions to that. So while you may not be able to use Children's of Wisconsin, you are able to use Children's in Madison. So that is our preferred network provider from a network standpoint, not only from a quality of care standpoint, but also from a cost standpoint. So in the long term, using a provider in Madison with the UW Hospital is, a long-term partnership that we have that will continue to help keep your costs and claims down, as well as allow you to continue to use, great access of care that I know some of your population has used in the past. So there really, again, isn't much else from changes other than a few providers being excluded from the network, so to speak.
Anyone have any questions of either Luann or Michael?
Yeah, Michael.
Yeah.
Commissioners, the specialty clinics or hospitals are eliminated. Which means that, like Children's Hospital or UW Hospital or.
I apologize, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Mentioning about specialty places or hospitals, providers were eliminated. That's it. Just heard you. I mean, like somebody could go to UW Hospital or Children's Hospital, volunteer greater or what?
So Michael,
I apologize, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
hear me, Michael?
A little bit, yeah.
I think what his question is asking about the specialty doctors, the ones that the participants can no longer see, like the Children's in Milwaukee, but the UW Madison I know is a great partner with you, so that is not dropped from the provider list, but the Children's Hospital in Madison is now available to participate.
Correct,
So,
yep. Absolutely, and they've always been available to your employees and their membership and their families. They've always had access to Children's in Madison. It's just that with the change, there's no longer access in the Milwaukee area. Again, that's part of what a narrower network provides, is it has to cut out some providers that we would deem maybe more costly compared to others. So, kind of that change is shifting from care going to Milwaukee to Madison, which in my eyes is equivalent care, and really from a travel standpoint is probably pretty similar for most of your population.
And this is Luann. Obviously, WEA took a look at all of the specialists, and even with the removal of those providers, there are more than enough specialists within the plan to make sure that your members are receiving care. When we did look at a report, I believe that number of members that were going or had gone to those providers were under 6, with some limited dollars there as well. So we felt confident that by removing those members still had access to care in other places. further conditions.
I did just look at that, and to confirm, there was like 6 or 7 members that utilized the children's in Milwaukee and or medical college. So again, it's not a huge disruption piece.
How about Freighter in Milwaukee? Do you have any idea if that accessible to the participants?
Freighter would not be available within this network offering, but I do not see that there was any utilization at Freighter in this past year. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
Judy, is there any continuance? Oh yeah, any continuance of care? We did cover-
Yeah, so that's a great question. So as far as continuing of care goes, it really doesn't apply in this situation outside of if someone was currently pregnant and in their 2nd or 3rd trimester, then we could do continuing of care. But if someone had a procedure done, let's just say at Freighter, for example, and then 2 years from now needed to go back to see that same provider, that wouldn't be an option per se. It would be considered out of network at that time. So we would certainly help with the membership to be able to find an alternative solution within the network at that point.
Right, and as Michael stated, those providers still can be covered. They're just covered at the lower network, so the deductible and the coinsurance is more, but they can still see those providers if for some reason they wanted to.
Yep. And with that said, I do think that on a case-by-case scenario, if it was something where there really was no other option available, we certainly look at those on a case-by-case scenario and can work through those. But in most cases, there are alternative solutions and specialists that can serve those needs.
Anyone have any other questions? You guys have any questions?
So with that, we're looking for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the plan.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded by Mr. Herder. Any further discussion? Then we need to go back to the ballots. Please cast your ballot. Motion carried 10-0.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Luann. Have
Thank
a
you.
great evening. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
All right, with that, we'll move on to the presentation of debt services, TID fund and general fund budget, wheel tax fund, sewage fund budget.
Okay, so I will be having Chad jump in here once I get to the general fund, because the general fund is our meat and potatoes of the evening. So it is our largest fund. It is where our employees are paid. It is where our fringe benefits are paid. So I will have him introduce that, but I have 2 funds prior to that that feed into that general fund that I would like to go through. And the first of which is our debt service fund. I usually present the debt service fund, or I always present the debt service fund first, because I look at it in my personal life or your, people's lives and say, okay, usually when you're looking at a budget, you have to pay your loans first. So this is our loans through, that the city has. So we need to make sure that the priority is to make sure that we're paying for our loans. So for 2022, I have in front of you the principal and interest payments for I'll take over. I got it. The principal and interest payments for 2022. I did include in here the state trust fund loan that was just approved last night. So principal $553,000, interest of $280,000 for a total of $833,000. You will see this number throughout the general fund. So that is why I'm presenting it first. So then when you see the number, you're like, okay, now I know where that came from. Just to give you a little bit of information, our total equalized value today is about $450 million. We are able to go into debt 5% of that, which is $22 million. We are currently at, I have every single debt payment starting in 21 all the way till the end. And our current debt actually at the end of 2021 will be at $10,290,000. So we're about halfway of capacity. But as you can see here, our debt for 22, 23, 24, and then we drop. And this is where we get ready for our downtown project. So by the time that we will go out for debt again in the future, we'll be at about $8 million. And then hopefully at that time, our equalized value will be even stronger. And our debt service and obviously we're not going to debt $10 million at that point. So we have a lot of capacity. We're very fortunate that our debt is actually much lower than a lot of communities that are surrounding us. So that is where we are at today. Another thing I want to point out to you while we are looking at this is when currently, when I look at my tax levy statement, the only way that we are allowed to increase taxes today by, we are on a levy limit by the state of Wisconsin is through debt. So if this debt service does not increase, and I know I've talked about this before, there is no way to increase the amount of money that we put on the tax roll. Now, we're going to have a conversation about the tax roll and taxes later. So just wanted to kind of heads you up. This is the only way that we can actually increase taxes outside of net new construction. And net new construction this year for the city of New London's increase was $24,000. So outside of that, all of the other increase for taxes comes through debt service. You can see we're at $798,000 for 2021. We are at $833,000. That's the only increase outside the $24,000 that you're going to see at the end of this presentation. But you're going to be making some choices about what this debt service is going to look like and whether you would like to add to this some short-term debt. So I think it makes more sense for me to talk about that now, and you can kind of take a look at this and understand that process, but we'll come back to that. But just so you know, currently for the year 2022, principal $550,000, $280,000 in interest for a total of $833,000. So that is our debt service. I did go through and provide you with what our debt service looks like. If we never took out another loan, we would be completely debt-free by the year 2040 at this point. Just so you know, I understand in your household that it makes a whole lot of sense to pay off a mortgage. When you are a going concern and you are a city, it does not do you any good to be completely out of debt. I know that's how some people would like to run a city, very much like paying off debt, and that is a positive thing. But to move a city forward, being in debt is not this, you don't look at it as the same way as I'm going to retire and I need to be out of debt. A city doesn't retire. So a city debt is actually healthy. It's not unhealthy. It becomes unhealthy when you get in a point where you say, okay, I said to you, there's $20,000 of capacity that the city, $20 million in capacity that the city has. When you're topping over 2/3 of that number, that's when it becomes unhealthy for a city. But up to that point, utilizing those dollars is actually very healthy. All right. Any questions on that? We will come back and talk about that.
Judy, isn't the old, your debt service should never exceed more than 25%,
We say 2/3.
a third.
Correct. So you maintain a third, and that's for interest rates. So when we go out to debt, we always have a rating study done, and Moody's will look at your capacity. And if you're over 2/3, your interest rates go up.
Yep.
Prior to that, it doesn't matter if you're at 2% or 2/3, your interest rate is going to look the same.
The interest rate change every year?
It depends on the instrument. So some of them do. The last one didn't change at all. So we were 2% from beginning to end. Interest rates were phenomenal when we went, and that's why we hurried up. We moved forward in 2021 with a debt service because the interest rates were just almost unheard of.
So, I mean, basically, you have like a line of credit. I mean, or do you, each loan has its own interest rate and once it's paid off?
You are correct. And each loan has its own interest rate and it's not a line of credit because we don't pay to have, because a line of credit, a lot of times a bank will charge you to hold the line of credit. We don't pay to have a line of credit. Every time we go out to debt, Ellers, Phil Costin works with us on that. And each instrument is a unique within itself. And then you start in that year and usually 20 years later, you pay it off. Now, what can happen with debt service also, so let's say we're in a high interest rate environment and we go out to debt. Our financial advisor will actually say to us, okay, when you go out to debt in 2024, we're going to refinance the old debt to save you interest. So we're constantly looking at old debt to make sure that we're in the same ballpark. So we did take a look at actually our debt because we were in such a low interest rate environment the last time. And we had like 1% on some of our old ones. So yeah, it's not free, but it is a very low interest rate environment. All right, so that's debt service. And like I said, if we never took out another piece of debt, but what else is very interesting when you look from year to year is you can see that things are dropping or remaining the same. And as your city builds, you have bigger capacity. So it allows for you to go back and look at big projects and stick them in, look at in 2036 here. It's a planning tool. So you say, we're looking at building a new fire station or building a new, building in between here. Then it gives you an idea of when maybe possibly down the road, something like that could be done. I'm not saying it would be as late as 2036, but you think through these processes. When we go through capital in another week or another couple of weeks, you'll see how we go through a 10-year process of thinking through what we can do today and where are we going from here.
Just going to be so net new construction is 24,000 this year.
Correct.
All this new development, like the Romanesco thing, these other ones,
Should help us.
those will be around next year. So we should be in the hundreds of thousands, right?
Correct. As long as that construction, so they look at assessed value as the beginning of the year. So whatever is
Oh.
finished as of the beginning of the year. So you can have somebody start in February and you won't see that for a whole another
Oh, yeah.
year. Yeah, so it's a process to get assessed value onto your books. So sometimes it can be 2 years before you see any kind of relief from development. I'm not saying we don't want it. It just
Sure.
sometimes takes time to see those dollars come through. And we don't know what'll happen with the tax levy. I'm kind of hoping they give us a little bit more of room in that levy eventually here. So they did have it on this year's agenda, but it didn't get done. So
Okay.
that is the debt service. Then I'm going to highlight the TID fund. This is the Beacon Street Cottages, as we all know, that what a great construction and addition for housing that was. So our value in that area is $738,000. The recoverable amount is about $226,000. This one will actually close in 2023, so you won't see this one anymore. The purpose of showing you this is you'll see this dollar amount, this increment flow into the general fund as an addition to the general fund. So that is why I go through that one. In the near future here, we'll be going through hopefully a lot more of these. Each year, I'll be showing you the value and probably, because they're a lot bigger and a lot more information, maybe some pictures and all kinds of things with these TIF districts. Any questions on that, Tiff? That's actually an TID. All right, and then I am going to turn it over to Chad here, and he's going to get us started on our general fund budget.
Cool, thank you. Obviously, this year's budget was a little bit different. We had some new faces involved in our budgeting process this year. So Dave, Ginger, Luke, and Nicole, congratulations on your first process of the new London City budget. But we also want to recognize everyone else who had many hours crunching numbers to this point. Special thanks to people in the office, April, Jill, Missy, for a lot of behind the scenes data entry, spreadsheet calculations for the process, and of course, Judy, who spends numerous hours in crunching and double crunching the numbers and researching what the state has changed and what they've implemented, how that affects us in putting together the entire budget. So kudos to everyone for being involved in the process. Overall, whether you think it's a good thing or bad thing, for the most part, our 2020 budget is pretty much status quo. We do have obviously some staffing and restructuring and organizational changes that everyone knows about. We had some employees jump on the city's health insurance policy, but other than that, there's really little change to the general fund budget. That can be looked at as a good thing, that we're keeping our tax rate pretty flat, but it's also very concerning as the continued levy limits like Judy talked about and the tight expenditure restraint program that has been in place for years. It keeps us in a position and makes it extremely challenging to offer the numerous services that the city and the residents can demand that we offer. On the positive side, Judy has done a great job in keeping us safe, in a safe position with a healthy unassigned fund balance and a future retirement, a fully funded retirement reserve account. So we're in a good position if we do have those bumps in the road. Looking forward, is no secret that filling and retaining our quality employees has been and will continue to be a major challenge in the future. We're not going to solve that problem tonight, obviously, but that's something that we'll continuously have conversations moving forward as we're competing with larger cities and private organizations for those quality employees. Chief and I were talking, we're hearing of other cities offering signing bonuses for officers and other employees. That's pretty much unheard of. So we're going to need to be more competitive and trying to figure out how we're going to attract those employees. But on the flip side, that does create a compression challenge with our current staff. If we're offering more for getting those new employees in, what are we going to do with our current staff? So, and we need those in quality employees. We are expected to provide those high quality services. We have mandates from the state and federal government to offer some of those services. So what are we going to do to bring those quality employees to provide those quality services? Again, we're not going to solve that challenge tonight, but I just want to set the stage in everybody's head that that's something that we're really going to continually talk about in the future, how we're going to compete in that arena. But that leads me to talk about the wage process for the 2020 budget. In the past few years, the city has been trying to budget a 2 or 2.5% wage increase. Understanding our future employment challenges and with the mayor's blessing, I did instruct Judy to draft up this year's budget with a 2.5% wage increase for all general, full-time, and permanent staff. The seasonal and general part-time staff wage increases will be based off of a fee schedule that you guys will see in one of the committee meetings moving forward. But just to be clear, I want to make sure that, especially for the new alderpersons, this budget has a draft 2.5% wage increase. So approving this budget does approve that wage increase for the staff as well. So with that said, I want to thank everyone who was involved in the process, and then I'll hand it back over to Judy for all the nuts and bolts of next year's budget.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chad.
Nuts and bolts.
Nuts and
Nuts and
bolts.
bolts.
So we're going to start out, and I'm just going to reiterate what Chad said. There is not a lot of change within this budget. I talked about the constraints of the levy limits and all those things that the city is under. When our department heads, when the city's department heads sit down and begin the budget process, they know that. There's a budget memo that goes out. They understand that the city has very few dollars from year to year within the operational budget that we can increase or decrease. So the message always is, if you can, if you're going up somewhere, please try to look at other areas within your budget to decrease, so that overall we're not looking at too much of an increase, because they know we only have 24,000 amongst every single department to move up. So I know it's a year after year after year. So I'm hoping eventually that the state will give us a little bit and allow us, because I'm going to go through some of these things, to cash fund some of the things that we're going to look at tonight. Because if they allowed us a little bit more of an increase, it would not increase taxes for our citizens, but it would allow us, instead of taking out short-term debt, to cash fund what we're looking at tonight. And again, that's going to be your choice at the end of the day, but there are not a lot of differences between this budget and last year's budget. But I will go through and highlight the increases and decreases at this time. I'm gonna get this out of my mouth because I'm talking over myself. It's not only driving you crazy, it's driving me crazy too. So, okay, the first group on this page is expenditures. So what I do is I go through and in a very high level, I say, what were the increases in the budget and what were the decreases in the budget? Now, just keep in mind when I get the actual budget from all the department heads, and I know I'm old and I'm old school, but this is what it looks like. So then everyone goes through and they actually send this to me and on a computer. This is me that prints it off and goes through the budget. So this is a high level of what was in here and what increased and decreased. So the pool went from one full-time employee from two full-time employees to one full-time employee. So that was a decrease of about 23,200. Ambulance costs. Now this was huge for us. This allowed all kinds of things to happen this year. That decrease was $31,500. I know anybody at finance saw that contract and that was approved. So that decrease really helped us do some other things within the budget. We had some changes in staffing that had about a $33,000 increase. So this second line is the increases within the budget. There was an overall increase to payroll of $65,400. That's the whole entire full-time staff. Police fringe increase. Anytime we have somebody move from a family to a single plan or from a single plan to a family plan, it's quite a big jump. So that was a $16,000 increase. And that is something that we can't hold employees hostage for. So if they, get married or, there's a child, you can't tell them, you've started with a single policy and you stay with the singles policy. So these are changes that we need to absorb within the budget. Recreation fringe increase. We had a family increase on the recreation side. Public works went from full-time to or two full-time to one full-time, or actually it was a half-time to a full-time. And then there was an overall increase. As you know, we did a great job, or the consultant and we trusted a good job keeping those dollars down. So that overall increase was $14,007. And then some miscellaneous increases within the budget. So the overall increase to our budget was $108,000. Keeping in mind, we have a $8 million budget. So this is a very tight budgeting. So we're up about 1.4% overall. I don't know how many organizations out there today can tell you that, from last year to this year, or from this year to next year, our budget is only up 1.4% or 1.5%. Revenue increases. This also made it a little bit easier budgeting this year. So library aids were up 8,000. The state highway aids were up 22,000. The utility tax equivalent was up 41. Public charges, what our employees will pay anytime our health insurance goes up, our employees pay more money. So that'll be up about 5,500. The sewer transfer, which is a payment in lieu of from our sewer fund to the general fund, about $3,000. And then building permits, looking at some increases next year. And then we also know that there are some developments that are going on. So I felt comfortable increasing this about $6,000. So that's $86,000. So you can see there isn't much of a difference between revenues and expenditures, but always those expenditures seem to outweigh those revenues. And so then we work on how to make ends meet. Any questions on any of those? I will be going through these in more detail as we go through the presentation here. So the next page, this shows changes in expenditures. Again, from budget categories. This is what you will approve in ordinance at the November finance/council meeting. So I'd like to show you what this is gonna look like before you actually approve it next month, assuming that things will flow through. So, and to just show you how small of an increase by category that we're looking at for the city. So our general government went up 0.22%, public safety 0.72%, public works, and that was just a change in a position. So an increase from a half-time to full-time, and that was all approved ahead of time, all those changes and all those increases, so 76,000. And you like to see your public works actually getting a bump in expenditures, to be honest with you. Culture and recreation, 8,600 and a 0.42%. So just not a lot going on within the increases within those budgets. Kept our equipment maintenance at 130, and then we're gonna squeeze one way or another $500,000 out of this capital budget and keep that the same as it's been for the last 2 years. Actually, I look back and in 2019, we in our capital budget had 350,000. So it is always something that I look at is to keep this. It's a goal of mine in the budget process to keep this at $500,000. We get a little bit creative of how we're going to do that from year to year, but to keep this at $500,000, I think is very important. We know we pulled a lot of street projects out of this and look more at bonding, but this is to replace equipment, do maintenance on our streets, things of that nature. And you'll see that detailed list coming forth at the capital meeting. We will go through this in more detail. On the next page, we have revenue again. And then I go through and explain those changes. So shared revenue, which is one of our largest revenues outside tax, it is our largest revenue outside tax collection. We actually had a very small decrease. Our utility payment, and this is from the utilities, went up our payment in lieu of taxes, 41,000. We had an increase in our state budget on the state highway aids, and I did bring a little bit of information on that because I know, Tim, you had asked about, where is that money intended to be used? So I pulled some information. First of all, it's calculated on a 6-year average. So the more we spend on roads, the higher that number will be. And we have been increasing the amount of dollars that we have been spending on our roads. So a percentage, it covers the portion of costs of such things as road construction, filling potholes, plowing snow, grading shoulders, and marking pavement and curbs and gutters. So that's the intended use of it. And as you go through, you'll see that a lot of those dollars actually are earmarked in our snow plowing and then the Department of Public Works. As you can see, and an expenditure, we spend about over $1 million in our Public Works Department. So it's $625,000 and we earmark over $1 million. So that is where those dollars come from. We do have a printout of the dollars that we've been spending, and we can see those dollars increasing. And actually our current 6-year average is at 3.7 million and our 3-year average is at 4 million. So that tells you over time, we should see that dollar amount increase because our 3-year average is higher than our 6-year average. So. County aids increased about 8,000. That was for our library. And as you know, their expenditure side increased about that. So that was nice to see that there was almost a revenue for an expense. License and permits, we talked about that. Otherwise, there was no change, very small change within this. And again, we were up $84,000. And that was that is 1.8%. And then if you add in the sewer fund and the TIF money, that's the fund I went through before. And that's why I did it ahead of time, the $16,069. That leaves us with a general fund revenue of $4.4,888. About 1.82% increase, which is nice to see. There are times that we struggle on the revenue side where we do not see these kind of increases from year to year. And then you're like, okay, where are we going to get an increase in our expense side if we have no increase on the revenue side. Any questions on any of those? All right, then we'll go in a little bit more detail on our expenditure side. So this is actually, we're gonna dig it a little deeper, and these are major categories to actual department categories. So we were at a very high level. And as you can see, we're in the total general government at 1.3. And then this is what that category entails. So you have the mayor and council, you have administration, which includes the clerk, the treasurer, the city administrator, the building inspector. And then we have our insurance line item and community development. And as you can see, there was basically no change from one year to the next in that category. Public safety includes police, fire, and ambulance. Overall, we saw about 0.72 increase. The increase within the police department was wage increase, and then a single to family insurance, so very minimal for, I know it looks like a big dollar amount, but it's not, because it's a $2.5 million budget, so it's under 2%. And remember, when you see under 2%, there is a 2.5% wage increase within this budget. So it is a very minimal increase. And then the fire department, yes, there's that 2.34, and yes, they get a 3% increase, but their wages at overall are smaller than all the other departments. Ambulance service went down. We talked about that, and that was also presented at the last finance committee meeting. And then we have public works as its own category. They don't have anything within, and they're at over $1 million. And they did have the largest increase, but also had a big change within pulling that director out to be a full-time job again. Senior van and center, so the health and human services, that's a senior van and center, social services, and then the cemetery. And there's just a very minimal change within all of those also. And then we have culture and rec, which includes the library and museum, recreation, parks, building and grounds, pool, cable, and the Washington Center gym. So we did have any increase in this category had a decrease in this category to kind of make up the difference. So the library had their annual wage increase of 13,000. Recreation had an increase of a family plan and their wage increase. But then they had the decrease in the pool from full-time to two full-time to one full-time. So their actual total overall increase within culture and recreation was 0.42. And then again, we put $130,000 in our equipment maintenance fund. And those are the categories, the departments within the ordinance categories, just drilling down a little farther on those. Then you have any question on any of those departments, any increases or decreases that you have any questions on?
So in the city, everyone usually gets about a 2% wage increase.
Do you want to talk about that? You want me to?
It's been an average of 2.5. The city has done a compensation study. It's been on average every 5 years. And through that study, the consultants have gone around and compared New London to other municipalities and just tried to see what the compensation plan has come in. So we'll be looking at possibly doing that again in the next year. And that's kind of set the stage for any wage increases. But over the last cycle, it's been an average of a 2 to 2.5% wage increase.
But each department does different. It's not just a citywide flat increase.
General employees that you guys oversee would be the 2.5. Obviously, the police and fire, they're managed by the Police Fire Commission. Utilities is separate, library and museum is separate. So those boards or commissions oversee the wage increases for those departments. So you guys, obviously the general employees have the structure for the general staff.
Okay, so another part of the budget presentation is any item. So this even drills down a little farther within the budget. Any items within the line item budget that are over $2,500. Someone had asked at one point that these be put on a spreadsheet and provided, so they are. And what I usually do, unless somebody has a particular question about a line item budget, I go through and highlight those that changed or changed by greater than $2,000, because anything other than that is just a small increase as far as I'm concerned. So they're highlighted here. Insurance went up about $4,000. Crime, property and liability, I think that's minimal in today's environment, to be honest with you. And then health insurance. It's called health insurance, but it pays for like some of our blood draws and our EAP services that we provide to our employees. That's all on that page. Does anyone have any question about any of the other line items on that page in particular? Most of them stayed from one year to the next, the same. I was corrected on this one with the police department. I apologize. That one got highlighted as actually 2021 was $5,500. So it is the same from year to year. The annual pump ladder testing for the fire department just went up. It's an anticipated increase from one year to the next. Our ambulance contract went down. The landfill, so this is VTech, I believe, brush contract. So we're having somebody come in, compost, I believe, some of our items so we can get those out of our.
Yep, we're taking our brush to DTAC now.
So that was that increase. Any other questions on any of those? I think everything else stayed exactly the same. Okay, the next one, we actually have none that are highlighted. No big, no more than $2,000 change from one to the other. Any question on any line item that catches your eye, like you're not sure what it is, or? Okay. We'll move on to the next page, and the only thing different on here is the decrease in the stump removal, and I think that's because of the DTAC. So that's going to be taking over that. Oh, we got one too.
We bought a stump grinder, so we don't have the contract anymore.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah, I know, right? So excited about this, buying that piece of equipment, So any other questions on any of those that stand out? Otherwise, no increase. Here, even you will see within our fringe item, our health insurance total is 20,000. Our retirement is minimal. Actually, our retirement for the general employees did not go up this year. The small increase you see here is for our protected service. Social Security and Medicare, anytime you give a wage increase, 7.65%. We'll see with some of you are payroll people. 7.65% will automatically go up anytime you have a wage increase. And that's what we're required to pay to the federal and state government.
Just got one question about the fireworks for 11,000. I know some organizations donate towards the fireworks.
Yep. So on the revenue side, you'll see the 11,000 come in, and then on expense side, we have the 11,000 go out. And yes, it's fully paid. And there's Ginger with us?
It is fully paid.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, then we put it together by budget by fund. We have the general fund and then the debt service fund. So here is the dollar amount for the debt service that I went through 2 funds ago, the 833,000. And then the total of the operational funds. I'm going to go through a little more detail of the fund balance, transfers and reserves. Our general fund tax levy is given to us by the state of Wisconsin. As you can see, it is $24,000 more than last year. So they added the money in. I get the worksheet. I have it with me tonight if anybody wants to see it. And they say, this is your dollar amount for next year. So basically I put that in there. And I work from operational revenues and general fund tax levy. I put those two in. And then I put in applied fund balance, transfers and reserves. There's a couple things I know about the transfers and reserves. I know we're getting money from the sewer plant of about 179,000. I know we have the TIF dollars, and I know we have some sales revenue from Outagamie County. Otherwise, it's where are we gonna make it balance? Because what we want to do on the other side is our expenditures, which we went through, and then our $500,000 in our capital equipment. So we want to balance our 8 million with our 8 million. So the $379,000, and I'm going to move to the next page, comes from these reserves here. So this is the transfer from the sewer fund, the $149,000. The reserves below here. So capital reserve carryover. Those are dollars we did not spend from our capital fund this year that will move into next year. Capital reserve dollars from our assigned fund balance, which we talk about continuously at finance. So I would be utilizing money out of this fund. Then we have $21,000 was the estimate coming from Outagamie County, and I think that's going to be a little higher next year. I think that email you sent me, Chad, said that I think that one's going to go a little higher than anticipated here. And all that would happen is that if that's the case, we would take less out of reserves. So I would increase that and decrease reserves. Or maybe we need a little bit more money for capital. There's something that we're running over a little bit on. We would just leave it the way it is. And then I would request we use $50,000 of operational budget. That would get us to the budget you see in front of you. So I'm going to go through this part too. So we have salaries increased from one year to the next of about $100,000. So remember, $33,000 of that was the change in Department of Public Works. We went full, half-time to full-time. And then the rest was the 2.5% increase. Fringes went up minimal, 2.46% in fringes. That is absolutely amazing from year to year to see that kind of increase, especially when you have health insurance in there. And then our operation and maintenance went down a little bit, and a lot of that had to do with the decrease in the ambulance subsidy. So there was an increase in the hiring of VTech and then the decrease. So between the two, that's where that change came in. And then the 500,000. So when I took a look at this, I said, okay, we can continue to do the $500,000 from one year to the next. This would be one approach. So we would take money from our capital reserves and some money from our operational budget this year and make this work. Okay. So what happens when we look at this in tax levy form? So I want you to focus on the dark line left first. So last year we had a tax levy of 3.7 million. And this year we're looking at 3.795 million. And or 3,795,000, I should say. So our increase is $59,000. That's it. So, and this is an increase in a levy also. So $24,000 of this is what the state allows us in our operational funds to increase. And then we also included a state trust fund loan. So this is what gets extremely frustrating sometimes, is because we went up to see our equalized value on the bottom of the page from $416,000 in equalized value to 416 million to 450 million. If we were allowed to increase our taxes and keep our tax rate the same, we could cash fund some of this capital. But because we are not allowed to do that, our tax rate is going to drop. If you see 8.96 here, is that 8.96, right? And 8.43. So the question for the committee tonight, I have given you a budget that will drop the tax rate from 8.96 to 8.43. The question is, does the committee, and I'm going to present this and then it's going to be your choice as a committee, okay? Do we want to take out short-term debt, not use our reserve dollars, keep them, and utilize the short-term debt for capital? So what we would do is take that short-term debt, and I've done this in the past. It's unfortunate that we have to continue this practice. I'd rather not. We're talking about minimal interest rate. You take the loan out at the end of December, you turn around 5 days later and you pay it back. But it allows you to utilize that funding for capital projects instead of pulling from your reserves for capital projects. So that you continue to have about $240,000 in capital projects, revert the reserves instead, bringing it down to $183,000. So if the city, or if your choice would be, and I put over on the right-hand side to take out a short-term note for $50,000, that would increase the tax rate to 854, even still less than last year or this year. If we took out a short-term loan for $100,000, 8.65 still going to decrease the tax rate from this year. So trying to maximize the amount of dollars the city can bring in without deteriorating our reserves, without increasing our tax rate, and actually decreasing it still, is something that I feel this council should consider. Also, I went through, and this is my spreadsheet that I use every year. And there's a lot going on in here. But so I use equalized value today to show you a tax rate. When I actually calculate the tax rate, I use assessed value. And I use what's called a ratio. So an assessed value ratio. These two numbers tell me how much that property is going to pay in taxes. So you can see this is a very complicated formula that it's a spreadsheet I use to calculate the tax rate. And what I don't know today, and all communities don't know, is what the assessed value is going to come in at and what the ratio is going to come in. I did reach out to Adam and he did an estimate on these. What I want to share with you tonight is what the tax bill would look like, and this is on a $200,000 home using Adam's anticipated assessed value and his anticipated assessment ratio. Okay, so what you have in front of you right now is today's tax rate. This is what tax bills went out last year and looked like and is our tax rate. We are at 948 and 942. So this is what Outagamie County, this is Wapaka County. So this is our actual tax rate today, right there and right there. What I want you to take a look at is, here is our current tax levy. Okay, so we're gonna go down to the next page. I don't want to lose you here. The next page is the current budget, no short-term debt whatsoever. Okay, just taking from our assigned fund balance and making it work. What's going to happen? And that would be 3.795. Okay, so we go from 3.735, 3.795. Our tax rate on a $200,000 home using estimates, please remember that these are estimates, will go from 1.739 from 1.1795. You're going to see a decrease in your taxes. That's the way it is presented today, no short-term debt. Now, the next one shows with the $50,000 in debt. So adding another $50,000 to the tax levy, that tax rate would be 1762, that tax on that home, 1762. Today, we are at 1795, still lower than the taxes today. If we move up to $100,000, 1785. What are we at? 179. We did make a promise to our citizens when we looked at the library project, okay, and that we would not increase taxes. So if you're concerned about those things that we talked about, this $100,000 in short-term debt is still going to bring your taxes down. They're not gonna be huge, they're not gonna be, but to keep that levy like this, instead of dropping this year and then maybe back up next year, we know we have a lot of things going on with this in the city, and I would suggest that we try to keep utilizing our capacity for taxes and not continue to decrease that, because if we decrease it, remember next year, then with expenditure restraint,
Yep.
it puts me back down here instead of up here. So now I can only increase here. So we're putting ourselves backwards in the expenditure restraint too, because now I can't move up from here. I can only move up from here, and we could have been up here in dollars. So that is the question on the table tonight. What, as a committee, would you consider? Now, I'd also request that I do not have assessed values today. I do not have the ratios. I will have those. And the beginning of next month or the end of this month. Last year, they came in the end of October, or the beginning of next month. And I want to be safe as you guys want to be. So if you have, any appetite for the increase in loans, in the short-term loan, I would suggest, if you want me to maximize those dollars, that you give me the ability to increase 100,000, and then I can calculate them when I get the numbers. The problem is we have to get this in, we have to put this in the paper for 14 days. What is our rules? 14 days before the council meeting when it's approved. So what I would publish is the $100,000, knowing that you gave me authority up to $100,000, but I would not increase it that high if it was going to increase taxes. So I could know for sure what those assessed values look like. I will know for sure what those ratios look like. And I would definitely not, I can still tell you possibly we're going to see a decrease in taxes even with the $100,000. But if that's not the case, when those numbers actually come through, I wouldn't do it.
When, sounds like a no-brainer to me, it's simple arithmetic. When do we address this particular piece? After you're through with everything, or do we need to do something now?
What I would request is that once we get through the general fund budget, that we go ahead and approve, because this is going to drive debt. So if you approve up to $100,000, we will approve debt service with the increase of up to $100,000. So you'd make that motion plus 100,000 up to 100,000. Even you could even say with no increase in tax levy. That's our direction to you. And then TIF is just you just pass that one through. And then the general fund, you would decide, you would actually put out the levy as 3.895, the higher, or 50,000 if you're more comfortable with that, or, go back down to where I've actually balanced the budget, but we're utilizing assigned fund balance. That's entirely up to you, but that's how we would do it once we finish this conversation. I do want to point out to you that I do have the assigned fund balance. So if the, up to $100,000, what would happen is we would keep these dollars amount within our reserve fund for just in case purchases. As we know, we've had to use some of these funds in the past because we've had equipment break. But that's where that change would be made, is to keep this whole. It's still not gonna change the fact that any dollars that we have left over from 2021 are gonna be used for 2022 in capital. So today we're saying we have $500,000 in capital. Just remember, if we can increase that, we're gonna do that in February of next year. So that has nothing to do with this actual levy today.
Judy, is this like? I feel like this is a smart move because interest rates are low. And if interest rates were high, we would suggest.
I'm gonna tell you that First State Bank has been extremely accommodating with us with these short-term loans. And I think last year when we did the $50,000 one, I don't know. He does it.
Pay it
Yeah.
right away.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you don't even.
We
pay
wire.
Gosh.
Yeah, because they have access to, so there's no check written. So out it comes and in it goes. It's real. So I have to authorize them. So I have to make sure that when I come back in after the holiday, please, pull the money out for the loan. So they take it out and then they deposit it in at the 7th hour. They can't do it on the 31st because they're not open. But the day, the day before they close and then the day I get back. And I think last year it was under $50.
Yeah, it seems-
So you're saying it was under $50 for fees and interest, or
They didn't charge us any fees, just
Okay.
interest.
and how much in interest?
It was under $50. I could tell you I can't tell you the exact amount. I should know that, but I don't. I'd be lying if I told you I remember. I know. But I can get it to you if you would like me to. I know it was under 50. They don't charge us any fees for the processing of the paperwork or we actually do our banking through them, so quite a bit of our banking through them. They don't even charge us for direct deposit for our payroll system, so it's a great relationship we've had with them. And then these are where our reserves are, some of our reserves, and I'd like to go through these. So a reserve fund, like Chad talked about for retirement, is extremely healthy. So if the whole place decided to up and leave, which hopefully not, the payouts we would be fully funded for. Unassigned fund balance, as we know, is extremely healthy. I didn't put in here the library promise and the general fund that was included in this budget. So that we would expect over $3 million even at the end of 2022. And what we really like to see, and what I should say what policy is 1.2. We know that we get 2.1 million from state shared revenue, and we don't want to drop below that ever. I like 3 million as a nice number to keep within our unassigned fund balance.
Did we usually go 50,000 on the short term? I know we've done it a number of
We
times.
have been doing that because we've been doing that for a number of years now because of the restraints we're under with the tax levy. Trying to maintain 8.696 levy, from year to year to year. And if you can't do it, and that's the hard part for me to understand. Yeah, okay, we're trying to keep taxes steady for homeowners. But if the state would just give us a little bit of growth room, so, you're a great community growing, we're not allowed that growth capacity anymore. So if that were the case, we wouldn't even be talking about this. I'd add $100,000 to this as an increase. I'd probably even do a little bit more to keep that a little bit closer. And then we'd be just like, okay, let's go. And we'd cash fund it. But we can't. It's kind of a game, actually, a puzzle.
Like ballast water.
Yeah. So, that's your decision. I would suggest we play safe and if you're going to choose to do short-term loan, that, we definitely, I approve this debt, no increase in taxes, and up to 100,000, and I'll wait until the values actually come out, and then there won't be any question that, that's gonna happen. If I bring it back down, I definitely will. I'm gonna tell you right now, if I calculate that and it's a taxing, we're gonna go right back to 3.795. And we're gonna run it out and we'll pay for it through reserves.
we should make that motion now.
You guys want to talk about it, discuss it? Any other questions?
Ready to go back to debt services to make the motion on that?
I
With-
think what I would do is probably have somebody decide, or somebody, have the committee decide general fund, and then it affects. So we'll decide general fund first, where are we gonna go with this? And then we'll go to debt service and then PR2. And then we'll move on to the other two.
So we're looking for a motion to accept the 2022 general fund budget.
And the question is what levy? 2.795, 2.845, or 2.895?
Which levy includes the 100,000.
Make a motion to accept.
What's your levy?
$3,895,200. 3 million. Oh, messed up. 3,895,200.
Billy, you're gonna make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the 2022 tax levy of.
Motion been made by Ms. Olson, second by Mr. Zog. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots.
Sorry.
Brett? Motion carried, 9, 1 no.
Now we'll go back up to debt service. And you guys can be as detailed as you want about that one. It's gonna be a debt service now of up to 933. Let me grab it. I'll give you the number. 933,959. And then you can go from there. No increase in taxes. Maximize the tax rate. Verbiage of that nature.
I'll just throw it out there too, that if you're maximizing the tax rate, or even just to keep it a little bit under that.
It will, looking at estimates, my anticipation
Yep.
currently is. still.
And remember that the county just came out with those numbers not too long ago showing that New London had the lowest city tax rate in Wapaka County. So, I mean, that's another factor in the back of your head. You're keeping a tax rate consistent that we are currently the lowest municipality or city, sorry, in Wapaka County. So maximizing that is a good thing for the city budget.
So when we're going,
So we're gonna be trying to get it.
What motion you need to, this is for a short-term loan?
actually, it would be to allow me to go up to 933,959 based on, when I get those true assessed values in, but not increasing in tax, not, if that's your direction to me, with no increase in taxes.
Direction would be to maximize it without increasing taxes.
There you go.
So the motion.
So,
would be
yeah.
to Approve the debt service fund of $933,959. With the stipulation would be no tax increase in the levy.
I can make that motion, unless John did.
Was that Fouché with the
Yes.
motion?
I'll second it.
Shay with the motion and Dorsey with the second.
The motion again was to approve the debt service fund of $933,000, 959 with the stipulation there'd be no increase in the tax levy.
Any further discussion?
Is it 933,000 or 833,000?
9.
9.
9, because we'd add the $100,000.
That would be.
That's why we couldn't do that.
Yep.
All set? Please cast your ballots. Motion carried, 10-0. On to the TID fund.
That would just be a motion to approve the ER2.
Ms. Olson, motion to approve the 2022 TID Fund with a second by Steve Grote. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion carried 10-0.
I'm anticipating our new TID districts to have a lot more information, a lot more expenditures and revenues coming in.
So we'll move on to commence discussion of 2022 budget recommendation to council. We just took care of that in line item 3 as a whole, correct? All right, we'll move right along to resolution to authorize borrowing.
Actually, I need to do the wheel tax ones for wheel tax and sewer fund yet. I need
Oh,
to
yeah,
go back up.
I'm sorry. I jumped right over that.
All right, so the wheel tax fund. Anybody on finance has seen the wheel tax fund, maybe more than anybody really wants to see the wheel tax fund, but here it goes. Don't kill the messenger. 2020 carry forward of the wheel tax fund 57.9. 21 estimate of revenue coming in of 127. We know we have the railroad project that the railroad project is finished. We just had a little bit of expense this year. Shawano Street's starting to come through, so they have 175 here. Our estimated carryover is 77.4. New revenue for 2022, so a balance to be utilized. Now remember, Shawano Street, this is the estimate of Shawano Street, so I'm not sure if that'll be a little less or a little more. So we anticipate 204 going into 22 to utilize within these projects. We haven't gotten any estimates on that. Well, no, we haven't gotten any estimates on them yet. So Spur Road, Avon back here in case we need some dollars for that. And then the North Water Street Bridge. And then I also included those projects we have completed with wheel tax dollars and the actual revenue received through 2020. So then we'll just need a motion to approve that wheel tax fund budget.
I will make that motion here.
Motion been made by Zog, seconded by Dennis Herder for the 2022 wheel tax fund. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Mr. Ritchie. All right. Motion carried, 9 yes, 1 no. Moving on to sewage fund budget.
All right, Mr. Ben. So patiently. All right, so the sewage fund budget. Ben has talked to you in Department of Public Works about most of which I am presenting today because we actually talk about it before he comes in to discuss it with you in Department of Public Works. And then we have a follow-up meeting after the fact so that I know how to put this budget together. Currently, are anticipated for 2022 estimated, remember these are all estimated, I expect about $1.8 million in user fees. There is going to be a rate increase in 2022 that you guys approved at the Department of Public Works, so that'll bring in about an additional $32,000. Interest will leave the same at $45,000 as last year. Some special assessment revenue we anticipate. So the revenues for that sewer plant, 1.865 million. Expenses, so we have the collector system, 121,000. The wastewater treatment plant itself at almost $1 million. The depreciation expense, so that's all the equipment over there. That's how much it depreciates in 1 year, so 709,000. And then they do have a small amount of, actually one debt instrument over at our wastewater treatment plant. And that interest payment is 140,850. So I know Ben talked about this, that we will be doing a rate study next year. And this is why. So the net result of operations for the wastewater treatment plant is a negative $95,000. So we'll be taking a look at that rate structure next year. And then there will be a recommendation in the Department of Public Works and then go before council of where that rate structure will go. You will have a choice in, is it a rate increase today? Do you step it over time? And what does that look like? So you'll definitely be participating and be a big part of that rate structure and what it's going to look like moving forward. Then we have capital expenditure. So there's a debt payment, a principal payment of $215,000. Some equipment, some new pond airlines, some air valves for the digesters, and lift station number 1 rotating elements is what Ben will be working on next year in projects. And then we actually, or the city, the wastewater treatment plant puts away $392,000 each year to be cash funded for water main and water laterals. This is up. We did a rate study about 4 years ago. Was it? Yeah, and we doubled the capacity, right? Double the amount of money that we decided that time that we would cash fund some of the projects. I believe Division was one of them where we completely cash funded the sewer project on that street. And then there's the general fund contribution, about $150,000 to the general fund, which I talked about in that budget. So we have the results of operations of a negative 95,000. We always add back in the depreciation because it's not real money. It's just dollars, the depreciation of the plant over time. So the income of 613, but then we take the operational expenses out of there. So our net decrease is $168,000. The wastewater treatment plan is also doing very well in their working capital items. They have about $1.1 million at the end of 20. We expect $308,000 left in the current budget. And then at the end of 22, a negative 168. So about $1.3 million in retained earnings. Now remember, some of that is assigned. So of the 1.3 million, 160 is earmarked for equipment. 129,000 of that is for water and lateral. Since we actually are putting the money in water and lateral, we want to move that money forward if we're not spending it and specifically use it for what we want to use it for. So I started designating those funds. A truck savings for a truck of $68,000. Auto valve for storage trucks of $12,000. So at the end of 22, we actually expect that retained earnings to be at about 932. It's at 1.3, but minus the designated funds of dollars available of $932,000. I just did not say that word. And then specials that we are collecting, the Division Street, we will collect through 2029 at about $9,000 a year. I still haven't calculated the Warner Allen, so we will be putting that in there once we know exactly what those dollars are. It's much smaller than the Division Street project. We do have a project list. We're constantly looking at what we're going to do next, and the Mill Street project is on there, and then redoing the water system at the wastewater treatment plant. These are, again, 2 projects that you would approve prior to this spending of it, just a list so that things don't get lost from year to year or from time to time, and we still have those projects listed and know that they need to be done. Ben estimated a dollar amount left in his bond funds after his projects might be ever completed. And so he's going to use those funds to do some upgrades at the lift station 1 and lift station 4, some electrical, adding 208V to those places. So the gate and driveway at the wastewater treatment plant, he would like to take care of that project from there too. I know it does say a negative $28,000, but these are estimates at this point. So if the estimates come in higher, that $28,000 would be taken out of retained earnings. If they come in lower, then we will need to switch gears and decide if we're gonna take some of the equipment or some of the projects from the current year and subtract them and actually utilize those funds by the end of the, we want to make sure that we're utilizing those funds by the end of the year, by the end of next year. So we will zero that out one way or another next year. Any questions on the wastewater treatment plant?
With that, then we'll look for a motion. Motion to accept the 2022 sewage fund budget.
Absolutely. Yep.
Second.
Motion been made by Zog, seconded by Mr. Ritchie. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion carries 10-0. Now we can commence discussion of 2022 budget recommendation to council, and that was completed by the above matter. Move on to line item 5, resolution to authorize borrowing.
Okay, so within your packet, Nicole actually gave you 3 resolutions. And one was for 50,000. Actually, I think Missy did this. One for $100,000 and then one that's empty. And what I would like you to do tonight is approve a resolution to maximize the levy. I can't really give you what that dollar amount is, but up to $100,000. So authorize me to borrow is basically what this is, up to $100,000 in resolution form, and this will come back to you. So it's not like you're giving me a checkbook. So this will also come back to you at finance as the ordinance will come back to finance, and it will all balance out. So authorize me in a resolution, or actually approve a resolution to authorize borrowing up to $100,000.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion been made by Mr. Dorsey, seconded by Mr. Zog to approve up to $100,000 borrowing. Any further discussion?
Providing.
With no tax increase.
Correct. Any further discussion? Please cast your ballots. Oh, hold on. Motion carried, 9 yes, 1 no. Move on to line item 6, scheduled capital equipment and projects meeting, November 3rd, 2021, immediately following the finance and personnel meeting.
I just want to say one word before I do that. I just want to thank all the department heads. They really make my job much easier by getting the information presented to their committees in a timely manner and then handing them into me and then being present tonight. They are as much a part of this budget process as I am. So I certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your night, and unfortunately get over through soon, but thank you very much for your attendance here tonight. And then the scheduled capital equipment and projects meeting, and we've already done that. So that's on November 3rd. And I constantly remind everyone that we need to get that information into April so that we can get those 10-year capital plans. And I look forward to presenting those at that time.
I'd also like to recognize everybody involved in the budget from top to bottom. Seemed like a pretty painless job, as much as work that goes into it. Seemed like it was a flawless execution of it. So thank you very much to everybody. That will entertain a motion to adjourn. Richie and who's second? Robert second. The motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.